Major milestone in the Alberta separation movement. As the petition officially reaches 300,000 signatures, many are starting to wonder what Alberta separation would actually look like. The Liberal government cuts pharmacare and plans to gradually eliminate bilateral healthcare funding, officially shifting the burden onto the provinces. And David Eby's BC NDP are tabling a motion to restrict the freedom of information even after an already massive drop in the polls. Got a few interesting stories for you today. Stay tuned in your Thursday DominionWatch report. As for the first story of today, Alberta separation has officially gotten 300,000 signatures. But wait just a minute. What would Alberta separation actually look like in practice? We all know that there is a major provincial referendum vote on October 19th of this year. This vote will have 9 questions focused on immigration to constitutional reforms such as provincial control over immigration and amendments to the Constitution of Canada regarding court appointments and the Senate. However, and this is the big news, a group called Stay Free Alberta submitted a petition to have a separate question on this referendum. And that question would be, should Alberta separate? And that petition has garnered 300,000 signatures and counting. The required threshold was 178,000 signatures. And the Premier has stated that if this is verified and they actually can verify that they've gotten all of these signatures, then yes, there will be an independence question on the referendum. What would it look like? Well, it wouldn't stop there. The question of whether or not Alberta can become independent would, in my knowledge, have to go to the House of Commons, in which case it's unlikely that a federal government would pass a motion for Alberta to separate unless there was a strong enough, and I mean a really strong, movement of people who wanted separation. But even outside of that, it would be a very long, lengthy process, and I don't even know all the ins and outs of it, so I'm not going to speak on this too much. But I will tell you what I do know, that it would be very long, very lengthy. Quebec had a very similar referendum in the 1990s, I believe it was 1995, and it came down to the wire. But the law of Canada states that if a province is to separate, it needs a clear majority on a clear question. So it's not just above 50% of some vague question. It would need to be, I don't know, let's say like 2/3. It's a little, I believe the law is a little bit vague on this, but I think it's like most people would agree, like 2/3 of people, maybe over 60%, over 55%. Like, I don't think there's an actual number on it. I think that it is vague, but it would need a clear majority of people to agree on a clear question. And in this case, that question would be, should Alberta separate from the Confederation of Canada? The downside is that while Alberta may be the 4th most populous province in Canada, on a global stage, its population is pretty tiny. It has less than a 10th. Despite being larger in land size, it has less than a 10th of the population of the UK. So that would mean limited manpower for military, for economic industry, building, etc. But on the positive side, Alberta has some of the most natural resources anywhere in Canada, so it would have a great export market of especially oil and gas. And without restrictions from the federal government, I'm sure they would waste no time in building up their natural resource projects. And while Alberta doesn't have access to a port, which is another downside, and would have to rely on either the US or Canada to get its exports to sea, there have been other landlocked countries that have been successful. I think of Austria, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, all known for having incredibly high GDPs, despite being these very small landlocked countries. Some of them have less like Luxembourg and Liechtenstein have a very much smaller population than Alberta does. And another upside is that they'll be able to make their own laws and won't have a federal government kind of stepping all over them, like many people in the province are concerned about, and kind of the reason why this petition is so popular. But I'll get into that in a little bit. But as someone who lives in the eastern part of Canada, has lived kind of a little bit center, but mostly east for the majority of my life, well, actually all of it, and someone who's never been in Alberta, never been around Alberta, but respects the province, it kind of feels like this separation question came out of nowhere. Maybe only the last couple of years I started to hear about this. But that is not the case. Alberta separatism has actually kind of always been a thing, similar to Quebec. The province joined the Confederation of Canada in 1905, and in the 1930s, a political movement called the Social Credit Movement started a federal political party, basically to support the causes that people in Alberta were most concerned about. It was essentially like, for a modern reference, so that you guys kind of were all on the same page, it was sort of like a very early Albertan version of like the Bloc Québécois. But the party lost its last seat in the 1980 election, and in 1993 it officially disbanded, ending a very long 60-plus year long run for the fight for Alberta. But it didn't end there, because around the same time you had the Reform Party start in the House of Commons. This was a conservative party, right of the Progressive Conservatives, kind of serving as an alternative to Kim Campbell and Brian Mulroney's incredibly unpopular party at the time. And this party gained a lot of support, way more than the Progressive Conservatives did, especially in the prairies, especially in Alberta. In the last election, 2025, I believe 63.5% of Albertans voted Conservative, winning 34 out of 37 seats. So very conservative province. But this is where the rebellion part kicks in. This is why this movement has exploded in recent years, is because a lot of Albertans feel like they've been voting Conservative for the last 11 years. And for the last 11 years, there's been not just a Liberal government, but a Liberal government that actively seems like it wants to stomp all over what Alberta cares about. They've restricted oil and gas. They've pushed Liberal agendas. They've rapidly increased immigration. All things that people in Alberta have not been too fond of. It seems like law after law that the Liberal government has passed has been incredibly unpopular in the province. I mean, in the prairies in general, but especially in Alberta. So in a way, you could say that this is a rebellion to a lack of change. That they've been voting for change for 11 years, but they feel like they've not been getting it. The fact of the matter is that this is what happens when the government doesn't respect the rights of the provinces. Moving on to our second story, though, Liberals cut pharmacare from 2026 budget despite promises to fund it. Despite the Liberal Party stating for years that one of their core policies is expanding the funding for pharmacare and healthcare in Canada, in their recent 2026 spring budget, it's mysteriously disappeared. They've been criticizing the Conservatives for many years, saying that Conservatives would cut pharmacare. This is despite Pierre Poilievre, CPC leader, saying on a number of occasions that he would be willing to keep pharmacare, that he would be willing to keep the funding for healthcare in Canada, and that he would not try to pursue some private healthcare system like in the States. The government said last year when they released their November budget that, quote, "Our government remains focused on empowering Canadians by lowering costs, expanding opportunity, and protecting vital social programs Canadians rely on, from childcare to dental care to pharmacare." According to their newest spring budget, there will be no new federal funding for pharmacare and gradual drops in bilateral health funding over the next 2 fiscal years. This means that now the provinces are going to have to shoulder the weight of healthcare even more than they already do. And it makes me wonder, how is this going to affect the Alberta referendum question? I'm not sure. But it seems like Mark Carney has virtually gone back on everything he claimed he was about. Play the clip.
For strong support for our seniors who built this country. We are fighting for childcare for young families that they put in place. We are fighting for dental care and pharmacare for everyone who needs it. We are fighting for rights. We are fighting for a strong economy so we can create a more sustainable world for our children and grandchildren, and we will deliver.
I know that there's a sentiment in Canada that we just want hope. We just want someone to come in and change it, no matter what they look like or where they're from. We just want hope. And that, I think this is one of the biggest reasons why people criticize Pierre Poilievre, because they're like, oh, he's just too mean. Oh, he keeps criticizing. Why can't we just be optimistic? And it's like, I get it. I get you want to be optimistic. I understand the desire to be optimistic, but we have to look at the facts here. And the facts are that Mark Carney has virtually gone back on every single thing he promised. He promised to deal with Trump and the U.S. administration. He didn't get it. He can't seem to make up his mind about whether or not he wants a pipeline, but he said he would have these national interest projects, and where are they? We haven't seen them. He said he was going to expand Canada's military, and in fairness, he has increased spending, but not nearly by as much as I think many people wanted. He said he was going to reduce immigration, and he has, but again, by very minute amounts. So, and now we have this. We have him saying that he wants to keep pharmacare, and now he's cutting it. He said he was going to practice fiscal discipline, but he has the biggest deficit of any Canadian prime minister, and he's exploding the national debt. These are just the facts. This is not me being partisan. This is just the facts. This is just what it is. And I get it. Canadians really want hope. I want hope. I want to be optimistic. Trust me, I love this country. I want to be optimistic about it. But the fact is that it's not getting better. We're at the exact same place, if not in a worse position now than we were a year ago when Mark Carney was first elected. But I started this channel to follow the facts wherever they may go, and this is where the facts are leading. So I would just encourage Canadians to stay vigilant, stay mindful of the facts, and think for yourself. Don't just listen to what the pundits are saying. Don't listen to what I'm saying. Everyone has a bias. There's no media outlet out there right now that doesn't have a bias. There's no commentator, especially, who doesn't have a bias. I would know I'm one of them. Think for yourself. Be vigilant. Keep mind of the facts, and above all, listen to both sides. That's all I'm saying. But in our final story for today, the BC NDP are passing a bill to restrict access to information of government records. Similarly to a bill that Doug Ford passed in recent weeks to restrict the freedom of information from the Premier, his cabinet, and his assistants, it seems like David Eby is taking a page out of Doug Ford's book. This comes as a risky move, seeing as the BC NDP have already seen a massive polling drop and would likely lose to a Conservative wave in the province if an election were held today, according to a recent Angus Reid poll that's up on screen. The BC Conservatives tried to introduce a hoist motion in the Legislative Assembly, which would have suspended the bill for 6 months so it can be discussed and debated further. However, the NDP forced closure, and as of me recording this, the bill has passed second reading. So what does this mean in layman's terms? Well, the Freedom of Information Act, every province has one, I believe, and we have one federally, that essentially says that the public can view the records of the government caucuses to a certain extent, but most of the information that goes on in government is available publicly so that we can, as the public, can hold them accountable in whatever way that may take shape. But the principle is that we, the public, can view what's going on in government. Doug Ford passed a bill to restrict information that comes from the records of his office, his cabinet's offices, and his assistants' offices. So we can in Ontario, you can no longer view the records of what's going on in most parts of government now. And it seems like David Eby, from everything I've read and all my research, is doing something very, very similar. Now, the polling gap between the Ontario Conservatives and Ontario Liberals has dropped 9 points in the last 4 weeks, just since the end of March, according to Abacus data. I made a whole video a couple of days ago. Feel free to check it out. I will put it in one of the corners up here. So chances are this is not going to end well for David Eby or his NDP, only because of the effect it's had in Ontario and the fact that he's already seen a massive polling drop. The BC Conservatives right now are surging in the polls. and it's by all likelihood would be some kind of conservative majority in the province if an election were held today. But will David Eby recover? Will the Conservatives drop? I mean, we'll have to wait and see who wins the BC Conservative leadership. It'll be an interesting story, and I definitely look forward to keeping you guys up to date on that. If you live in BC, the election day is May 30th, but until May 30th, I will be keeping you guys super up to date on that, because this race actually fascinates me. So that's about all I got for you today. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. God bless you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.